Hey everybody, Paul from Vastex. Today I'll be going over the assembly of our D1000 conveyor dryer. Actually the same thing for our D100. The only difference is D1000 is a little bit bigger and it also does have a 10-inch conveyor extension that comes with it. Other than that, same basic assembly. Pretty easy, so let's get started. You can see here we have the front and rear of our D1000. For the D100, you'll just get these two pieces. D1000 standard comes with a 10-inch conveyor extension, so that'll actually fit right in the middle. The only tool you need for assembly is a 1/4-inch nut driver. If you have a power drill, you can use that to speed things up. Just some sheet metal screws and then this will go right together. When you're putting the conveyor together, make sure your white piece is showing on both sides. It'll slide right on and you'll have 6 screws, 6 of the sheet metal screws on each side. We'll put those in on this side, then we'll go to the other side. The sheet metal screws on the conveyor can be tightened down pretty well because this is thicker metal. Just be sure not to over tighten the screws anywhere else on the dryer. So that's the last screw for this side, so we'll do it the same on the other side. Now we're done with this side. If it's a D100, you'll actually be done because you just have the front and rear. D1000, we have the centerpiece, so we'll actually take the back end here and join it to the rest of the conveyor. Now with the conveyor all together, let's assemble the chamber. Now when you receive your dryer, it'll already have this heater bracket on it. So we just need to put a knob on. So make sure this is facing up just like that. Your pointer is the correct way. And we'll thread our knob through, make sure it goes through the weld nut on the other side. See that? Make sure this weld nut is in place on the other side. We can just thread that on. So we'll just have to do that on both sides, then we can assemble the rest of the chamber. Now for the chamber, we use the same 1/4-inch sheet metal screws that we use for the conveyor. So let's grab a side, and this is our front panel. Let's get our screws in on one side, and then we'll get our other side on. Now on the back, since we don't have the screen print to make it easier to tell which side is up, just make sure you have the hole facing up because we'll need that to screw the top onto the chamber. Now that we have the sides of the chamber together, we can put the heater in. Now on the sides of the heating element, we'll have brackets to hold them into the chamber. The right side will have your wires coming out. The ground is actually screwed in there already, so we'll just take that out real quick. And we'll replace that once we put the bracket on. But the bracket goes just like this. You only have 4 screws. There's 8 holes, but you only want the 4 screws in the outside holes. Once we have the other 3, we'll reattach the ground wire to the last hole. And we'll do the same thing to the other side minus the ground. Now that we have our chamber together, we can drop our heating element in. Make sure your knobs on the side are nice and tight just so it doesn't drop once you put the weight of the heater in. So let's grab this. Make sure the cables coming out are on the right side when you're looking at the front of the chamber. We'll drop it down in, fit it on so it's resting on those brackets. Now we'll take our heater hold down tab, line it up with the holes, and screw it in to hold everything in place. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now we can drop our chamber on top. You'll notice there's small holes in the conveyor bottom, and the tabs on the chamber will actually fit right down into those. So make sure those seat down nice and flush, and we're good to go. Now on the D1000, you'll see it's actually back a little bit. On the D100, it'll be more centered, but since there is that 10-inch extension, it gives you a little bit more in-feed on the D1000. Once we have that, you'll see there's 3 holes on each side, so we can screw down the chamber. Now we're ready to feed the wires through the conveyor. You'll notice there's a small hole on the conveyor bed. That's where we'll feed the wires through. That'll only be on one side, so make sure the wires are on that side. It'll be where you have your all your controls. So we'll take our wires, we'll start with the tan ones, feed them through one at a time. All right, now the green wire, once they're through all the way, we can make those connections on the controls. Now with the dryer on its side, we can get to the control panel so we can do our wiring. We'll take our tan wires. They both have push connectors, so they'll slide right onto the terminals on the side of the heat control. Doesn't matter which one goes on which. So we'll push it on. Make sure it's nice and tight because we want a good tight connection on there. Do our second one. And you can see those on there. Now we just need to get our green ground wire hooked up. We have our grounding stud up here. There'll be a lock washer and a wing nut on there, so we've already removed that. So we'll just slide this up on. We'll put our lock washer and get our wing nut. So we'll snug that, make sure it's nice and secure. Once we have that, we can push the excess wire back through the other side of the conveyor. Now with our chamber on, our wiring done, we can put the belt on the dryer. So the easiest way to do this, first make sure your aligner bars are farther down, because the farther down they are, the easier it'll be to put the belt on, especially on bigger dryers. So we have those down pretty low, just turn the bolt on top, counterclockwise to lower those. That is the only bolt you'll have to touch. Don't mess with anything anywhere else, just this top bolt. So we'll wrap our belt around. When you're putting the belt on, we'll wrap it around the front and make sure there's this aligner bar that goes straight through. You want to make sure the belt goes around this front roller and then up and over that aligner bar. Back. The reason we need that over the aligner bar is because when we raise and lower that, that's how we track our belt. That's how we make sure the belt, if it shifts side to side, we can correct it so it stays true down the middle. Keep the belt from wearing over time, rubbing against the edges. It'll also help keep the belt tighter or looser. If it's too loose, it won't have the proper friction on your rollers and it'll start slipping as well. Now when you are putting the belt on, underneath there's two braces under the conveyor dryer. Make sure the belt goes up and over those. Now that we have the belt all the way around, we'll be ready to join it. We'll take out our belt splice that's already on the belt. This is where it really comes in handy to have that aligner bar all the way down. It'll make it a whole lot easier if it's up. The belt will be a lot tighter to pull together. So we'll align the lace. And we'll slowly feed the belt splice through, and then I'll join the belt together. If it is a little bit tight, you can always use a pair of pliers to help feed it through, but this was pretty easy because the belt is pretty loose right now, as you can see. Now if you want, when the dryer's still on its side from doing the wiring, you can actually put the belt around that way. It'll make it a little bit easier to get up and over those braces. With the belt together, we'll make sure it's pretty well centered on the rollers on the front and back, and then we'll move our aligner bar up to about 1.5 inches on both sides. So this is where it actually comes in handy to have a power drill, just because it'll make it a lot quicker to move these bolts up and down. But we'll just use a wrench for right now. So now that we're 1.5 inches on both sides, we can see our belt is quite a bit tighter. We want it that way just so it doesn't slip on your rollers. Now all of our dryers do have an aligner bar with the belt tracking system. They all operate the same way with two 7/16 bolts on either side. We'll come around the side here, turn on your belt. I like to turn it up all the way just because you'll see any movement a little bit quicker. If the belt is tracking to the right, that means your aligner bar is low on the right side. We'll raise that up by going clockwise on the bolt head here. It'll raise that aligner bar and push the belt the other way. If it's going to the left side, we do the same thing over there. Make sure you don't tighten it too much while you're doing it, because then you don't want the belt overly tightened. Other than that, you'll be able to get it set and going straight down the middle when you're printing. When you are tracking your belt, make small adjustments and give it about 10 minutes between each of those adjustments to see if the belt is moving. With the wires pulled up from below, we'll attach our wire guard just to protect them from the inside. With everything finished up inside, we can put the top of the chamber on, set it on and line it up, and we'll just tighten it down with the sheet metal screws around the top. Now we just have to finish by putting our chain guard and belt guards on. So we'll slide your chain guard on, tighten that down. Then we'll put our belt guard on. Once we have this, we do have belt guards on both sides. So you'll put the belt guard on the other side too. Obviously no chain guard on that one, so it's just the belt guard. Your control panel on the side is pretty easy. There's just two knobs and then your fuses. Your first control is your heat. So when the red light goes on, that means you are getting heat. It's just a high-low control, so you can adjust that accordingly. Second is your belt speed. It will speed it up and slow down the belt. One thing to mention is when you are turning off your dryer at the end of your shift, turn off your heat, keep the belt going for about 10 to 15 minutes to make sure that heater's cool before completely shutting down your belt. And here we have our completed D1000 conveyor dryer. All we need to do is plug it in and we're ready to go. If you have any more questions, check us out at Vastex.com.